What's up, guys? Welcome back to Roensch Capital Charts. Today we're taking a look at the ever so popular S&P 500 ETF SPY, ticker symbol SPY, on a variety of time frames in anticipation of the next trading day, Thursday, February 22nd. Well, guys, SPY here today. I'll refer to it as SPY stock. Just be aware it is technically an ETF. Represents the S&P 500, probably the most popular one by most people's standards. Of course, we finished the day up 45 cents a share, 0.09%, with a late day pump to thank there. However, we are up after hours, relatively substantially so. I mean, if we just get a rough estimate of where we closed here, we're up approximately almost 0.5%, 0.42% here on, of course, an upbeat NVIDIA earnings. So we now find ourselves pressing up toward against 500 bucks a share. So let's take a look at this name as we head into tomorrow, really the overall market. So while this video is of course geared toward looking toward tomorrow, which is Thursday, what I want to do is I want to start by looking at the 1 minute chart, and we'll actually cut this out so we can get a more contextual view of what I'm actually after here. At the intraday movement, so we can look to, you guys know I'm a scalper at heart. That's what I do each and every single day. I want to look at this from a contextual view of the morning to see were there any opportunities that we could potentially look that might replicate themselves tomorrow to generate some scalping revenue, whether you own SPY, whether you own options on SPY, and just have a core position in the name because, you know, you're buying the market basically. SPY is also, if the market is in play or we see a couple of very particular setups, it's a great name to scalp, especially utilizing options as long as our risk management is perfect. Okay, you guys know I'm not one to buy and hold short-dated options. The risk reward is not there. But that doesn't mean we can't use and abuse them as scalping vehicles. Simply using them as a vehicle with proper risk management in place. Okay, I also will scalp SPY with shares, okay, but the options are so liquid that those can easily be utilized as vehicles as well. Again, highly important to make sure our risk is managed if we go that route. But let me just show you what I was watching here today. I was really interested in this region here. We were seeing kind of the early whisperings of a repeat offender setup. This got a little sloppy, so I was looking for this next test to see if we could clean up. Of course, we saw a dump through there. So that rendered this setup, for me, no longer able to be traded. But I'm always looking, because these happen very frequently on SPY and the Qs, for setups of this nature, of the repeat offender setup. Okay, so you see here, this got sloppy. Ideally, I would have been looking for a clean bounce here with a wide channel between that -2 standard deviation band from volume weighted average price. By the way, nothing more than a self-fulfilling prophecy subconscious level, and the 20 EMA. Okay, good distance in there, enough room to hit target without any psychological hangups. It's a setup I trade a lot. I've traded it through horrendous bear markets, raging bull markets, sideways markets, and it has consistently produced edge. So that's what I'm typically looking for here on SPY intraday. Let's take a look now at the 5 minute. We're moving away here from the intraday mentality. Now looking ahead to tomorrow, one thing I do want to make sure you guys are aware of, look at this volume variation. Massive, massive increase in volume into the close on this big pump that we saw into the close. When you compare it to, you know, of course this move was larger, but when we compare it to this downside move that was, I mean, relatively aggressive to the downside, comparatively speaking, the volume was substantially more. So just understand that we're always looking for more volume when we see a move in our favor, compared to as little volume as possible when a stock, or the market in this case, the ETF, is moving against us. So bulls here, you're going to be a fan of that. All right, let's take a look now at the 30-minute chart. I mean, look at this. This is where things start getting really contextual, looking ahead to tomorrow. But look here. We have the 50 period and the 200 period before after hours here, or really, you know, before the larger portion of this after hours move on NVIDIA, and especially that late day pump. We were below both of those. We reclaimed the 50, okay, in that late day pump. And we've now, after hours, reclaimed the 200 period. Just within a couple of hours here. That's a really big move. So here in the 30-minute chart, if I'm a bull tomorrow, I want to see both of those hold, ideally, as support levels. Okay, help get some feet up underneath this move. It's already kind of there. This is a beautiful move above, sitting on top of that 200 EMA. Sorry, that 200 period SMA. And bears, obviously, you're going to want to see a fade back down beneath at least that 200, if not the 50 as well. Let's move on now and look at the 4-hour. You can see here that we have done the same thing with the 50 period on the 4-hour chart. Bulls, we're going to want to see that hold, ideally act as like, I think what would be beautiful is if we see a retest of that, act as kind of a trampoline to push us up through that really important level. We'll get to that in the daily chart. And bears, obviously, you're going to want to see a fade hard back downside beneath that 50 period, heading down toward that 200 period, which is currently sitting right around 487. Now, let's move on here to the most important chart of all. This is one of the most popular charts on the planet. SPY on the daily with the 50-day moving average and the 200-day moving average. You have some volume. You have implied volatility. For me, that's all I need. This is not going to show after hours movement, so understand we're a little closer to 500 as of right now. This tells a really simple story. And listen, when the story is simple on a chart this popular especially, keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it. You want what everyone else is looking at. The story here is really easy. $500 a share is a bullish dream right now. Reclaim 5, and then we can look to making our way toward all-time highs. Bears, 500 is your enemy right now. You want to see a hard rejection off of that $500 area, treat that as resistance and fade hard back downside, putting as much distance between the stock price and 500 as possible to the downside. Okay, that's what you're thinking about, bears. Now, that being the case, or that being said, let's take a look at the options bias we got in the chain today. We typically get a lot of volume in SPY, and we can pull some really, really good data out of here with all this volume. So we have 7.2 million contracts traded today. 3.295 million of those were calls, 3.9 million of those were puts. So we are seeing a slight bearish lean on the overall ratio in SPY here today. Understand, this was before we saw NVIDIA earnings. Okay, so I would expect that if we could also take into consideration options volume after we saw NVIDIA earnings, I would not be surprised to see a few more calls pile in, but this is the case we had heading into the close. And if we look here, interestingly, at least if after hours holds up and we don't see a fade into the open tomorrow, we're seeing a heavy short-term speculator bearish lean that, again, if this move holds, might not be happy tomorrow. Or, you know, again, if we end up seeing a fade, we're going to have to, as always, take after hours with a grain of salt. I mean, volume just is lower. You know, the open tomorrow is going to be a much more definitive time to decide, okay, where do we stand on NVIDIA earnings? Because after hours volume, it's just the way it is. It's always going to be lower. Okay, 966,000 calls, 1.59 million puts in that short-term speculator region. And then, of course, as is typical, the deeper you go, the closer to at the money, and then the deeper you go in the money, you start seeing more of a call side and lean. Of course, this is the S&P, so that's to be expected as you start getting longer and longer dated on those contracts. Listen, if you got value out of this video, please subscribe to the channel. I appreciate it. My goal is to hit 2,000 by market open on Monday. It's not going to happen without your help, so I appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.